How are you yourself, Steve? How are you keeping yourself motivated, engaged? What's keeping you going through this time when we are all socially isolated?
What's keeping me going? Trying to
Mm.
find ways to pay the bills.
What are you doing to keep everybody motivated and everybody, still engaged? Because it is difficult. I know you guys work in the office together all the time, and now everybody is working remotely. How is that? What are you doing to stay engaged and connected with them?
Yeah, that is a bit of an issue. And because we're one of the few aircraft brokers actually that has a physical presence, a showroom, we're the only ones obviously in the world. But there are some of my larger competitors that have big offices, and a big percentage of them might be in the office. But you're talking about, I don't know, 5 or 10 of these, the bigger players. And I don't think, anybody's really enjoying that space because when you're in that office and everybody's together and everybody's talking with each other, making phone calls and overhearing other people's conversations, you really have the benefit of learning much more than just from your phone call. So when I have all the people in my office, I think 1 + 1 = 3. But if you have one person working in an office in LA, one person in New York, one in London, one in Moscow, whatever, it's 1 + 1 = 1 still, because there's no interaction between those people. Yeah, they get on a call, have a sales meeting, and they converse. But I don't know if they're really sharing all the information, because they want to do that transaction for the information that they've found themselves, and they don't want to share it. So I like having everybody in my office, and what I'm doing is I'm calling all of my employees every day, all my team, and the sales guys, the research guys, my IT, graphic design. It was still engaged, but there's no way it's as beneficial as if everybody's in the office. For me, I much more appreciate everybody in the one room.
It's an interesting time, and I know that you are a serial entrepreneur as well, Steve. Obviously, you're most well known for the very successful, wonderful jet business. For someone like you looking around at opportunity in the market, it is obviously there's some terrible things out there, but there are also opportunities in a market like this. Where would you suggest that people could start to look?
Well, listen, if you want to stay in this sector, obviously there's potential acquisitions of not only airplanes, because you might have relationships with banks and people stop making payments depending on how long this thing drags out. And some people are going to get bailed out, like the airlines, and then some of the private 135 operators might or might not, depending on what their relationship is with the government people. But there are some opportunities to buy airplanes, to buy businesses, to merge, to in this quiet period, if you want to call it, in the last month or so, to think of new ideas, game-changing type of ideas. How do we change marketing? A lot more people might have decided that I don't need these big offices anymore, and I could be more working at home. More of my people could be working at home. Some might think, you know what, God, I am so glad to get back into the office with all my people, because it just lost its mojo. And, just different people have different impressions. So I think, listen, if you're in the entrepreneurial state of mind, you will come up with a new idea or a new opportunity to grasp. Yeah. I think, listen, in the pre-owned aircraft market, a lot of people saying it's on pause. I don't know if I'd say it's on pause. I'd say it has a pulse, and there are some deals that are definitely getting done, but by no stretch of the imagination is it business as usual. There was probably about 25% of the transactions that were in play, that were sort of in a letter of intent, negotiating purchase agreements, or even airplanes in inspection, that fell out of bed. And people just canceled. They tried to use an out in the contract, and now there's issues trying to negotiate getting deposits back, because they didn't have a real out to get out of the contract. But they saw an opportunity that they could renegotiate the transaction. And I don't think the sellers put up with that, and so they put up a fight, obviously, and they wouldn't release the deposits. People don't really know what's going to happen when this thing comes out of this coronavirus period. And anybody who is saying the market's going to go down X%, Y%, they have no clue. We don't know how many more airplanes are going to come on the market. Are there going to be a few more airplanes that are going to become available? Yeah, sure. But that's in the normal market anyway. You know, there's always airplanes coming available. Will there be more? Possibly. But until we really get there, I think it's really not correct to start making guesses about what the market's going to do, what percent the prices are going to be coming down, because prices have come down so much in the last few years. They've, you know, and those airplanes that are sort of older than 5 or 10 years, they've already taken a lot of the residual value depreciation, and they don't have much further to go. You have the more expensive, newer airplanes, they have a little bit more you know, space to drop. And that's where you might see bigger percentages drops rather than the older airplanes. In Europe means different than opening up in America. In Europe, we have every single flight, you know, 90% of the flights are international. So there's a lot of cross borders that are closed. So people can't fly around like you can in America. In America, you can go and get on your private plane, fly around the US freely. It was not a big deal. But in Europe, you can't go anywhere. So unless you have a home or a passport in those countries, they're not allowing you to go into that country. So it's caused the problem in our industry to go and show airplanes, look at logbooks, go to maintenance facilities, things like that. So that's been a big obstacle that we've had to sort of overcome. But we're using this time basically to get in touch with more of the clients, more of the people around the world are working from home. They're more easily accessible, more sort of, they have more time on their hands, so they're willing to strike up a conversation. And that's sort of good because we're trying to keep, I'm not saying business going, but trying to keep the communications and the relationships going, or to improve